Hi guys, welcome to my channel. This is not my first YouTube video, but the only YouTube video that is public on this channel. And today I'm going to be talking about my entire SIBO treatment journey, how I basically got started with the treatment, what I did, what supplements I took, and all of that, because I got a lot of responses on TikTok on my SIBO videos asking kind of like my whole journey and how I got here and all that stuff. So that's what I'm going to be doing today. If you want more of these like kind of videos about like gut health and SIBO, you can subscribe to my channel. I'll be putting out more kind of talking about my journey, but this is like the first in-depth one. Okay. And also, full disclaimer, I am not a certified medical professional. I am a master's in nursing student, so I do have a background in health. I worked in health for a year prior to going to my master's program, and I studied physiology in my undergrad, so I do have a background in health sciences, and I am looking to be a nurse practitioner at the end of my program. So I do have a background, but I'm by no means a certified healthcare professional yet. So I can only offer you kind of the advice that from my personal experience. This is not going to be like me telling you that if you do these steps, and if you follow this protocol, you're for sure going to be cured of SIBO, and you're never going to have gut problems ever again. Just putting that out there because I don't want that to get misconstrued. All of this treatment and all of these options should be discussed with your healthcare provider. I'm just going to kind of give more insight on my journey. Okay, so I will get started right off the bat by saying that I'll give a little bit of backstory on my SIBO. So I always kind of had gut issues growing up. I was a very sick kid. I had a lot of infections. I had chronic asthma, and asthma I still deal with today. And I was always treated with a lot of antibiotics when I had an upper respiratory tract infection. For those who aren't in medicine, upper respiratory tract infection is like a cold, like a bacterial infection, like strep throat. I used to have those chronically. So it started in my throat. I would always get like strep throat every month. And then before that, it was in my ears, ear infection every month. Super painful, not very fun for a kid. And I believe personally, and according to my nurse practitioner and my doctors, some of this bacterial overgrowth that SIBO was caused by overtreatment of the infections with antibiotics. And back then, there obviously wasn't as much awareness of the negative side effects of antibacterials and antibiotics. So doctors were prescribing them left and right. And being in the healthcare field and, you know, obviously one day wanting to become a provider, and I'm on the track of that, we do talk a lot about how antibiotics are overprescribed and how kind of it's like the first line of treatment for a lot of doctors, especially back then, because, I mean, if your kid is really sick with an infection, you want like the quickest way to make them feel better, because it's really, really hard to see your child in pain, and you don't want it to progress to something like really scary. That could be potentially life-threatening. So I do understand where they're coming from in treating with antibiotics, but now I feel like there's a lot more understanding that like it causes resistance, it causes superbugs, it can just cause a whole bunch of gut problems, because the one thing I will explain is that when you have a broad spectrum antibiotic, that's usually what they give you for like strep throat or like an ear infection after they do the culture, and they should always do a culture if you have an infection to make sure it's a bacterial infection and not a virus. But they will give you a broad spectrum antibiotic, and the antibiotic isn't smart, you know, like an animal or a human. It can't like distinguish which bacteria is good and which bacteria is bad. So it will just kill off essentially all the bacteria that it comes into contact with. That seems like a foreign pathogen. And our gut is primarily compromised of a huge gut microbiome, and that is a lot of times bacteria, there's different sorts of yeasts, and those are very normal in our gut system, and they're good because they help us digest the foods. And so when you overtreat, or anytime you take antibiotics, you sometimes will notice that your stomach gets a little upset and you're going to the bathroom a lot and you have diarrhea. disclaimer while I keep going, we are going to talk about poop in this video. I hope it doesn't get flagged because this is like a gut video, so I don't know how I can't talk about poop, but warning if you guys don't like poop talk. I guess. So yeah, so essentially this bacteria will just kill everything that it comes into contact with, including your good gut microbiome. And that is a problem because that can cause indigestion and that can cause long-term health issues. Now, I am not saying that you should never get treated with an antibiotic. I would never say that. But sometimes over-treatment can lead to other side effects. So yeah, that's a little bit of background on me. Another thing I would also like to talk about and add is that SIBO, which is small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, it obviously is an overgrowth of bacteria in your small intestine where you are processing most of the nutrients that your food, that your stomach kind of dissolves, and then your small intestine absorbs the nutrients, right? So that's where the overgrowth happens, and that's why you have trouble digesting things, in a sense. But I genuinely think, and I have talked to a lot of people with gut issues and SIBO, that restriction of calories and just eating disorders, it seems to be greatly linked with SIBO. Because SIBO is ultimately caused by stress and other, bacterial issues. So I honestly think the main cause of my SIBO was a lot of, treatments in my childhood paired along with a pretty bad eating disorder that I had in college and undergrad. And that was a couple years ago, so it's not like it was 10 years down the line and now I have SIBO. No, it was like 2 or 3 years ago. I still had a pretty active eating disorder. And my eating disorder consisted at first of just like not eating anything. So it was anorexia nervosa. And then I was eating, but I was eating maybe like 1,200 calories a day and exercising every single day, working out, lifting, occasionally doing cardio and stuff like that. And it was not enough, absolutely not enough to fuel my body. And I was just kind of focused on staying small and appearing lean, and that was like the goal for me during my AD. And when I finally kind of got to a point where I actually had one of my really good friends tell me that I wasn't gonna make really any progress in the gym, I wasn't really gonna make any gains, because I just wasn't eating enough. And I honestly, when you have an eating disorder, you kind of live in this like mental state that everything's fine and you are great and you're basically a little bit delusional. I'm gonna put that out there. And it kind of, her like insight into like telling me like maybe you should go to bulk and maybe you should like not diet and restrict your calories and you gotta like force yourself to eat like 2,000 to 2,500 calories every single day, like try to go the opposite way and work out a lot harder, kind of opened my eyes to giving up the restriction. And I'm still struggling with it, I will say that, but I'm not restricting anymore, so that's really good. But I think SIBO is a long-term effect of me not eating, because the way that my nurse practitioner and provider explained it was that SIBO is more so of a it's an overgrowth problem of bacteria, but it's also a problem of gut motility. And gut motility is how, the digested food moves through your small intestine, and that's called peristalsis. And so SIBO often kind of, the bacteria paralyzes the gut, so you just like don't have like proper movement. And then you like get backed up, and then you have diarrhea, and all of that fun stuff. If you don't have that much food moving through your gut's gonna kind of get like, tired, and it's gonna not know how to do its job as well. And because your gut is controlled by a bunch of neurons. It's a nervous system down there as well. And so essentially, like, I feel like my gut just stopped moving. And then when I started eating enough food, the minute I started like getting enough food in my body, and even when I was anorexic, I would say I was chronically bloated. Like for almost like 3 or 4 pounds of water weight bloated. Like I wouldn't eat, and I'd be bloated. I would eat a ton and I'd be bloated. And that's like the most debilitating part of it, because you just, no matter what you do, no matter what you eat, no matter how much you exercise, you look like you're 6 months pregnant. And it's just like, it's terrible. And I've talked to other people with SIBO and they say the same thing. The bloating is what just makes your mental health like so poor when you have SIBO. And so then I started, obviously my bloating got so much worse when I started increasing my calories. And at first I was like, okay, well, it's just because I'm increasing my calories, right? Like my body will soon regulate, like I'll feel better once I like gain a little bit of weight, gain a little bit of muscle, like it should all like, you know, tighten up, go back down. But no. I continued to just look very pregnant. And there's nothing wrong with being pregnant and looking pregnant, but there is a problem when you are not pregnant. And so yeah, so I would push out to the point where like I felt like my insides were gonna like spill out. Like that's how painful it was. And I know other people can contest to this. And it was just very, like abdominal cramps were really bad. Like I felt like I was having like my period cramps, but I knew it was coming from my stomach. Yeah, and my poops, my voiding schedule had always been, prior to this, very normal, you know, once or twice a day. And now I was maybe going like 6 times a day and nothing was really coming out, but I had to go. The urgency was there, but I was going like 6 times a day. And then other days I would literally just be having diarrhea all day. The next day I would be constipated. Like it was so frustrating, and I really felt like anything I ate, anything I did, the amount of water I drank, like all this stuff, I never like could figure out how to make the bloating, the abdominal pain, the intestinal like cramps, the just like GI issues. I couldn't figure out a way to go down, for it to go down. And then after a couple months of this, a long time of this, I would say, I finally was like, I need to go to a doctor. And I'm gonna put pictures up in a second of what my bloating looked like and what my stomach looks like now, not bloated. Just so you can kind of see like if you have a similar type of bloat. It was so bad. And I feel like I need to say this. If you have a really crazy bloat and you have a bunch of GI issues and nothing you eat or like do is really like working for you, and your doctor tells you you have IBS or something, maybe ask for a SIBO test, because the amount of bloat that I had and the amount of bloat that a lot of women have these days is not normal. Like it's not normal to be that bloated on a daily basis. So that's why I want to kind of say that and put that out there. So here's how I started my treatment, where I went, what I did, all that stuff. I had been dealing with this, obviously, bloating and pain and all these SIBO symptoms for about 6 months. And when I moved to Chicago for grad school, I decided to just kind of seek out help and find a doctor to help me with these problems. And I assumed I would see a regular doctor, they'd give me a referral to a GI doctor, and that's how I'd go from there. So I saw a practitioner, she's a doctor here, who was on my healthcare plan through my insurance. And I saw her and I explained all my symptoms. And one of my symptoms, which was not very fun and kind of painful, was that I would just go to the bathroom so much that I had a little bit of, which is a little bit of blood in my stool. And that's obviously a cause for concern to any medical professional that hears it, because it can be an indication of very, very scary things like colon cancer and like hemorrhoids and stuff like that. So when I told her that, and I told her kind of the combination of all my other problems, she basically was like, so it sounds like, and I brought SIBO. I had looked up SIBO. I had kind of done my research on it, and I was like, I think I want to go to a GI specialist and kind of see if I have SIBO. There's like a test I can take, and I kind of want to go that route. And she basically was like, I think that's a good idea, but you have blood, in your stool, and I'm worried about that. And the rates of colon cancer for younger people, I'm 24, are going up, and I want you to just like go and get a colonoscopy at the GI doctor. So I was like, okay, like colon cancer, colonoscopy, okay, that's the way that we want to go. And nothing against this practitioner, but I just was like, I don't know, like I have no history, my family history of colon cancer. I have no family history of cancer. I had no other symptoms except for a little bit of blood in my urine. Blood in my and I took the referral, and I kind of called up the GI doc and tentatively made an appointment. But then I was kind of doing a lot more research on SIBO, and I saw that a lot of people said they had more positive results or better results with a functional medicine practitioner, which is like an integrative kind of medicinal practice where they incorporate allopathic medicine, which is like regular medicine, with some of the naturopathic elements like supplementation. And so I kind of was interested on that route because I obviously still wanted the treatment and the testing, but I also wanted kind of stuff that would sustain me for a little bit longer. So disclaimer, I will say that a lot of functional medicine doctors, nurse practitioners, PAs, providers in general are not included in general healthcare plans through your insurance. So for me, it was really important for me to find somebody that was in network with my insurance, and I did find somebody in Chicago. And I think it's easier to find those providers when you're in a bigger city as opposed to a smaller one. So if you do have access to go to some like bigger city for your treatments, I would say you would probably have a better time finding a functional medicine practitioner in like that kind of area that is within your insurance range. And so I went to a clinic in Chicago called Whole Health Chicago, and I can't recommend it enough. It's a great place if you live in Chicago and you're having these issues. I would go see Wendy. She's the nurse practitioner. She's awesome. But yeah, so that's where I went. And basically I went and I saw one nurse practitioner, not the current one I have, but she was the one that was the acting one at the time. And I told her all of my symptoms, and I explained to her, I'm pretty sure I have SIBO. And I kind of gave her a little bit of my background in health, and I think she would have believed me, but some practitioners don't, because they just, like sometimes like patients are going up on WebMD and they're like searching up all their symptoms and they're like, I think I have cancer. Like I'm 100% sure I have cancer. But I kind of gave her my background, and she's like, yeah, like I feel like your symptoms are very consistent with SIBO, and let's just do a test. We can either do like a SIBO test, and we can do like a fecal test to test for other like intolerances and gut like microbiome, your gut microbiome, like any overgrowths. So I opted to just do the SIBO test at first because, as I understand, all these procedures are very expensive, and sometimes your insurance does not cover these essential tests. So my SIBO test was, I believe, like $150 out of pocket. and the fecal test was like 300. So I was like, I'm just gonna go with the SIBO one because I feel like it'll give me the results really quickly, and it'll be the easier one for me than the fecal one. So that's the test I went through to get diagnosed with SIBO. It basically consists of it's like a breathalyzer test almost. So we did the 3-hour one, and basically I had to you have to be in a fasted state, and then you have to like basically blow into a tube and blow into a tube into these little vials. And what they're kind of measuring in those vials are the amount of methane that's in your breath and the amount of hydrogen. I'll explain this later after I describe the test. So I kind of blew into the tube every 30 minutes. I took some of the glucose solution that they gave me in between, and then I did that for 3 hours, and I recorded it kind of every time that I was blowing, what time I did it, yada yada yada. And then I packed up all the tubes and I sent them to the lab, and my result came back. And so some people will know this if they've done their research on SIBO, but there are two kinds of SIBO. There is a hydrogen dependent SIBO and a methane dependent SIBO. And essentially mine was both methane and hydrogen, and both of my levels were pretty high. I'm going to put my levels up in kind of the lab value up here right now. And so that was basically my lab value. And they're both pretty high, like I said. So then when I spoke to my NP about the results, she was like, it's a lot easier basically to treat methane-dependent SIBO and harder to treat hydrogen-dependent SIBO, because the antibiotics that they prescribe for you for SIBO a lot of time really targets the methane but has trouble targeting the hydrogen. And so it's kind of like more of a long-term thing. So that's kind of the explanation that she gave me. And so then I basically went to her for my next appointment, and she was like, we're going to start you on antibiotics, and then we're also going to give you a couple more supplements. And I will also list all the supplements and all the antibiotics that I took in my bio, just in case you guys want to ever try them out, discuss it with your practitioner, etc. So she gave me Xifaxan, which is the broad spectrum antibiotics that's specifically for SIBO. There are other antibiotics that practitioners use, but this is the most common one, and it's also used to treat IBS. And so she gave me that one. And we also did a probiotic called boulardii, and basically I was on boulardii for the extent of my treatment on the antibiotics and a little bit after. And a lot of people on my videos were kind of curious as to why I was getting prescribed probiotics, because SIBO is like an intestinal overgrowth of bacteria. So they were like, why are you taking probiotics? Wouldn't that make it worse? But essentially what she explained to me, and kind of what I've gleaned from my learning in medicine, is that boulardii is a bacteria that really helps you digest food, and it's one of the good bacterias. And a lot of the time the bad bacterias kind of causes a lot of death of the good bacteria, because they don't get enough stuff to feed on. And so during the antibiotic treatment, you don't want your stomach to go to hell, because you're killing off all the bacteria and there's no good bacteria left. And so that's why she gave the probiotic as well during my antibiotic. And then she also, so after the Xifaxan treatment, which was 14 days of antibiotics, it was kind of rough, not gonna lie. My stomach was in a lot of pain, and I did right off the bat, I would say 4 or 5 days right off the bat, I noticed a great reduction in the cramps and the abdominal cramps and the abdominal pain that I was experiencing during the early bouts of my SIBO. And I noticed that went away pretty quickly. The bloating was still there, and it was still pretty bad. So I was kind of a little bit discouraged at that point. I was like, what am I gonna do? well, the bloating, because that's like the main thing that was really bothering me. And then additionally with both of those, they prescribed, it's a supplement, it's called Mega-Guard. And I'll put the link down below as well for this one. And I really like the supplement. It has like ginger in it, and some helpful like digestive enzymes from plants. And it really helps with gut motility. Of course, all these supplements that I'm mentioning are not FDA approved, and they're not tested a whole lot. So I'm only speaking from like personal experience and what my doctor has recommended to me for the supplements. But it really worked well for me because it kind of like regulated my bowel movements, and it helped with just the intestinal movement part of the SIBO that I was really struggling with. So after I finished my 2-week antibiotic round, I did 6 weeks of oil of oregano supplements. And oil of oregano is kind of like a natural like antimicrobial, so like kind of a natural antibiotic. And I did 6 weeks of that. I continued to stay on my probiotic because again, it's killing off a lot of bacteria, and you want to keep the good bacteria like replenished during that time. I was taking Mega-Guard as well, and then I think that was all I was doing at that point. So after 6 weeks, again, I did notice a little bit of reduction in my bloating, and the abdominal pain was almost gone. So then I just continued the probiotic for the time being. And then after I really started noticing like my bloating had gone down, and I was feeling good. I was feeling good for like a week or two. And the die-out started. And if you don't know anything about SIBO, the die-out is kind of when all that bacteria is dying, essentially, and it releases a bunch of toxins into your gut, and it causes the inflammation to just get worse. And I basically had rebound bloating. Like, I was so bloated again. It was so painful. It hurt. And I kind of like called my practitioner, and I was like, oh my God, like it's back. Like I have SIBO again. Like I don't know what to do. Do I need to go on another round of antibiotics? I'm so like, and she's like, okay, so you need to give it a little bit of time, a little more time. And that's what I've learned in this process is you kind of need to be really patient, because it's not going to be like you get antibiotics, you take the antibiotics, you take some supplements, and in 2 weeks you're like perfectly fine and everything's back to normal. That's not the case a lot of times, and it wasn't the case with me. So I will mention during the time of my antibiotics treatment and during the time of my antimicrobial treatment, the oil of oregano treatment, I was also doing a low FODMAP diet, and that was about like maybe 4 weeks of that. So 2 weeks during the antibiotics and 2 weeks during the antimicrobial treatment. And I basically cut out all gluten, I cut out all milks and lots of sugars. It was very restrictive, and for me that was pretty hard because I do come from an eating disorder background, and that was basically the main reason I got this disorder. So it was a struggle, and I will say that I am a student, but I do have financial support, and I am very lucky to have that financial support and to have access to a lot of these treatments, to the good foods that I had available and stuff like that. So I really didn't struggle too much to do the low FODMAP diet. But for somebody that comes from a lower income background and, you know, doesn't have like a bunch of money to invest into the low FODMAP foods, because it is expensive to be that restrictive in your diet. It is so much cheaper to just like, you know, stick to like eating whatever you want and eating accessible processed foods. So I will basically acknowledge that I had immense privilege to be able to follow this like regimen and this diet. So I followed it for 4 weeks, and then I basically, with SIBO, low FODMAP helps with symptom control. It doesn't get rid of the disease. It doesn't get rid of the bacterial overgrowth. It just helps that bacteria stay very small and not multiply. because bacteria often feeds on sugars and refined carbs. So like white bread, like lots of sugar, milk, like it loves that stuff. Lactose, it loves it. It feeds on it. And I was already, I'm very lactose intolerant, and I am mildly allergic. So I stay away from milk anyway, so that wasn't hard for me to cut out. I will say it's very expensive to buy alternative milks, which it shouldn't be, but it is. And the hardest part for me, because I'm a bread girl. I love bread. I love bread. Like, who doesn't love bread? I'm really sorry to the celiac people and the gluten intolerant people. I have a fraction of an experience of limiting my gluten that you do, and I commend you. But it was hard for me to eliminate bread, but I did for those 4 weeks. And kind of stick to the gluten-free products. Didn't have any sugary drinks, sugary coffee, didn't have any alcohol for 4 weeks. For me, I already don't drink that much alcohol. I used to, but I don't anymore. I maybe have like 1 or 2 drinks like every 2 or 3 weeks. So cutting it out for like 4 weeks was not a problem for me. I apologize for the noise. That's doggy gate. The doggy gate. Yeah, so that's kind of what I did. Stuck to a low FODMAP diet. If you guys kind of want recipes and stuff like for a lower budget, kind of keeping costs smaller, because I get it. I know it's really expensive. I can make a video on that as well. But so I did that for 4 weeks, and then I slowly, as per my practitioner's instruction, I started reintroducing some foods into my diet while I was on the antimicrobial treatment. And I started with like a little bit of bread, sourdough bread. And sourdough is good for when you need like a gluten-free diet, because the basically the yeast and the bacteria that are used to make sourdough bread kind of absorb all the gluten and eat all of it. So it's practically gluten-free. So if you're kind of looking for an alternative for bread when you are low FODMAP and you're not eating gluten, a good alternative is sourdough bread, and that's available really anywhere. I got it from a local bakery, which is even nicer, but you can also make it at home, and I bought a sourdough starter, and I kind of made my own bread at home, and that was good, because then I really knew where the bread was coming from, and it's a lot cheaper. It's a lot cheaper too. It's just kind of intensive. So there is that. And then that was kind of my symptom control. And then after my oil of oregano treatment, I continued the Mega-Guard, and I was put on kind of this supplement that it's called, I can't for the life of me remember the name, but it will be in the bio. I'm so sorry. But it was basically like a bunch of amino acids, like L-glutamine and all those kinds, that was supposed to kind of just help again with gut motility. And I will say, it didn't help me very much. It made me, my stomach very upset. And I did it for a couple weeks, and they were like, it'll regulate, but it didn't. So I had to cut that one out. So I wouldn't recommend it, but if it works for you, great. Great. It didn't work for me. It made my symptoms a lot worse. So kind of a little bit of a timeline before I go on. I got SIBO treatment in October. End of October is when I started. And then now it's obviously end of March, almost April. So it's been, let's see, 5 months since my treatment. And I, like I said in my TikTok videos, at about 3-month mark is when I started seeing some significant reduce in bloating. And that's a lot of time after treatment, I will say. Like 3 months, I was like, oh my god, like this isn't working. Like this isn't helping. I have some other problem. Like what's going on? Like do I have SIBO again? But after 3.5 months, I started seeing a real reduction in bloating. I wasn't looking pregnant. I was feeling a lot better. I was able to go to the gym, and I was able to work out and feel like, you know, confident going to the gym. Because like when you're bloated and you want to go to the gym, I don't know, I like feel like I look gross and I feel gross, and so I don't want to do anything. And so I was finally kind of getting on track with my exercise as well. And I was able to eat a lot more food that I wasn't able to eat prior to. So I started putting breads back into my diet. Obviously, still don't eat lactose. I eat lactose-free things. And I know sometimes lactose-free things can also irritate your stomach, even though they're lactose-free. But for me, I liked it. Increased my protein intake. And I was starting to feel very happy about the way that my progress, and the way that I looked, and the way that I felt. And now, kind of at the 5-month mark, I'm continuing to feel better. My bloating has gone down even more than it did in 3 months. And I'm still, I'm kind of phasing out, according to my practitioner, this was a good idea. I'm phasing out kind of the supplements at this point. I've completely phased out the probiotic. I've phased out that one supplement that didn't agree with me. And I've kind of phased out Mega-Guard. I only take Mega-Guard when I need it, when I feel like my gut motility isn't working as well. And bowel movements are a lot more regular. Bloating is down. And the only time I really have bloating, like I mentioned in that previous TikTok, was when I obviously eat lactose or ice cream or something, or during my period, which it happens to a lot of women. There's a lot of increase of water retention on their period, and it happens to me. I get really bloated, but not every day. Not every day like it used to be. Nowhere near what it used to be. So I would say I am pretty healed. I'm pretty healed, and I'm feeling pretty good. And I know that there is a high chance, kind of a high chance of getting SIBO again, but I'm kind of very optimistic that it won't happen. Really kind of sticking to limiting my refined sugars. Now I'm at a point kind of where my diet is open. All the allergies that I currently have, obviously I avoid those. But my diet is open. I will get a drink when I want to. I will get a sweet cocktail when I want to. I will eat a cupcake when I want to. I will eat gluten. I will eat dairy when I want it. And I don't feel as restrictive as before. And it feels really great because I can still feel confident with myself and still eat what I want. Really, really encourage people that if they have these symptoms, if they're experiencing something similar to me, to seek out medical help and really find somebody that explains things to you, because that's very important to me. I want somebody to explain things to me. I don't want somebody to just throw treatments at me and give me no insight, give me no input. I want to be able to feel like I have a say in where my health goes and what I do. And I think personally for me, this journey wouldn't have been as good if I didn't have a functional doc or a functional NP, and she really helped. She helped a lot in helping explain that. And not saying anything against recreational GI docs. They're great, and I've seen them for other issues, but for this one specifically, I do have a lot of trust in functional medicine practitioners. That being said, I wouldn't just see a naturopath, because a lot of times with SIBO, you do need treatment with antibiotics to really get the problem to go down. And so definitely see a nurse practitioner, PA, or a doctor that is a functional medicine practitioner and has allopathic prescription rights, in my opinion. That's my opinion, though. If you have had good experiences with just naturopaths or Ayurvedic medicine doctors or anything like that, then that's great. That's awesome. You should tell us about that. But in my experience, my personal experience, I think it's good to have both. I want to be the type of practitioner that in the future gives both options and has both options, but I do think that sometimes people get very jaded with regular doctors and allopathic medicine and completely veering to the side where there's none of that, in my opinion, is not always great. But I can understand where they're coming from. I personally do. Yeah, so that is the in-depth version of my journey and my treatments and kind of what I did and what I ate, because I had a lot of questions with those videos, and I kind of just like didn't want to like copy and paste like the same thing over and over again in my DMs to people, so that it's like a lot more in depth. And if you guys have any questions, if you guys want me to make other videos, even do like food videos, like what I eat in a day, like what recipes worked for me, what was good for my recovery, I would love to do that. But I do want to say that it's like hard. It's a really hard thing to deal with when you don't look and feel good. So I really want everybody to be able to advocate for themselves and kind of have an insight on what they can possibly do about their SIBO and their bloating. Okay, so that is all. Again, if there's any other questions, I will answer them down in the comments below, and thank you. All right, bye.